At one point, you were passionate about what you do, but now you've reached this point where you know that there's something different you want to pursue, but you're too fucking scared to make the move. Join me and Cheryl Muir as we discuss how to transition or pivot your business to pursue what it is that you really feel called to do. Cheryl is going to teach you the exact steps you need to take to let go of your current business while building your new aligned as fuck business with ease. From book publicist to twin flame guide, Cheryl transitioned her business with success in under 6 months and has since been featured on the cover of UK's Soul and Spirit magazine, as well as BBC, the Huffington Post, Elephant Journal, and Tiny Buddha. And she was also named one of the top female entrepreneurs to watch in 2018 by CIO Magazine. So without further ado, let's fucking do this. And we are back with Cheryl Muir, who has been here before, and I'm super fucking stoked, as usual, to have you on, not only because you're awesome, but because you are my best friend. Cue the unicorns and rainbows.
And crowns and Union Jack flags.
You know, what I really wanted to dive into today is this recent transition of yours that took place this year. And this transition was pretty fucking massive. I mean, you went from being a book publicist to a twin flame guide.
I did.
What was that like?
What was that about? I guess like everyone was like, so what are you doing now? What's happening? Yeah, I think from the outside it looked really, really different and maybe sudden, but it's something that had been bubbling up for a long time. And Ruby, I know you didn't know I was going to say this, but and Ruby's not paying me to say this, I must stress. But it all happened at ASL in March when I flew from London to LA to ASL. So like the motto there, people, is invest in yourselves. That's a whole other topic for another time. But it was when I was at ASL and I had this epiphany that a lot of the things I was doing were not aligned. Yes, I was running this publicity business and it was going well. It looked great from the outside, but it started to feel like a day job that I didn't want to have. And when you're running your own business and you're an entrepreneur and you're doing work that kind of feels like you've got to really push yourself to do and it doesn't feel aligned, it's really, really tough. And so something needs to change. So that all happened at ASL. And I remember having this moment of pure euphoria. I'm sure you remember it. There are many moments. And then I had this crash where I sort of came down from it and I started to resent the breakthrough because I suddenly realized all the things I needed to change. My mind started to go to like my Virgo moon side of like website and branding and messaging and photo shoots and I started to wish I could close Pandora's box and not know that this transition needed to take place.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. So first of all, for our listeners, yes, I didn't pay her for that plug.
No, you did not know I was going to say that.
And ASL is Amplified Soul Live, which is my 3-day intensive in LA. So you mentioned that you had a breakthrough there.
Yeah.
And then you started resenting the breakthrough. Tell us a little bit about that breakthrough. What was that?
I just got like goosebumps all up my legs as you said that. Yeah, it was a moment of really accepting what I'd been suppressing, and what I'd been suppressing since September of 2017 was twin flame content. I'd been talking about this journey I'd been on, soul growth, soul evolution, the rise of the divine feminine, and I've been digging into it a little bit and posting about it, but my publicity business was doing well, so I sort of foo-hooed it and pushed it to the side. And then at Amplified Soul, we wrote, I think the moment, and I haven't really talked about this ever, actually. The moment was when we wrote down the things that are, this is a bit of a spoiler for people who haven't been, we wrote down what was aligned as fuck and what was misaligned as fuck, I think was the wording. And it just became so clear when I saw it in black and white. I thought, wow, there's a lot I need to change here. And that was combined with getting on the mic at the event and speaking about twin flames, and how I felt was like night and day. And I get shivers and tingles as I say that. I felt so different. I had all these women coming up to me asking about twin flames, and the information was like exploding out of me like explosive diarrhea is the only way I can use the visual. But it was just like exploding, erupting out of my soul like a volcano. It just would not be suppressed any longer. And so that was the moment where I sort of went, oh, amazing, I've got to do this. And then it was, oh, fuck, I've got to do this.
Right. And that volcano like explosive diarrhea feeling,
Both,
you didn't get that from being a book publicist and thinking about what it was that you were currently doing.
Yeah, so the book publicity was my zone of excellence. I was absolutely excellent at it. I got results, all of the stuff, but it felt like a corporate job. It felt very masculine. It felt very in my brain. It was very black and white, logical, facts and figures. And what I felt when I was talking about twin flames was it felt like it was flowing. It was kind of like, I say volcano because it kind of was like lava, right? It was flowy, and it was something that came from a place that was so much deeper than publicity. Now, obviously, getting our message out into the world is so important, and I don't want to downplay at all having publicity as a skill. But the feeling I got from talking about twin flames was, yes, absolutely so markedly different from when I was doing publicity.
And I think it's really important to mention that publicity, I mean, this wasn't just your entrepreneurial gig. You had been in that industry for how long?
9 and a bit years, a decade-ish.
Wow. So to go from working in publicity, first in corporate and then for yourself, to create an entire business for yourself from the ground up, doing book publicity, right?
Yeah.
And then saying, yeah, I don't feel this really. I'm feeling this other thing, which is totally fucking different.
Yeah.
That's a massive transition.
It was really scary. It was absolutely terrifying. I'm really good at hiding it. Like I've got this like veneer, and it's from PR, right? You put on the PR phase of the smile and the jazz hands. But it was terrifying because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, in that I was still really finding my feet. And yes, I had all the skills from publicity of how to technically get the message out into the world, but I was like, how am I even where do I even start? It was really overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the part where I think this information is going to be highly beneficial to our listeners, because I know we've talked about this before, and I've spoken about this with a lot of my clients and people in the entrepreneurial space. Quite often we reach this place in our entrepreneurial careers, or even, our careers as leaders, where we're like, something just doesn't feel right anymore. Something doesn't feel right. And we hear like, the whispers in our ears of what we want to do, our soul yearning to do something different. But like you said, after your breakthrough, you're thinking about, oh my God, all the things that you have to do and change and create. It's very, very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So for the listeners who are contemplating a shift or a transition or a pivot in their career, in their niche, in what they are doing, how do you even get started? Because the idea of going into what it is that feels truly right and exciting to you in this moment, that's very romantic. It's very romantic. It's very like, oh, this feels good. This is great. But then reality hits, and there's a lot of different nuts and bolts that go on behind the scenes. I mean, everything from like what you mentioned, photo shoots, your website, your copy, your messaging, like maybe your Facebook page says a certain thing. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to give up your Facebook page and start a new one? Do you have a Facebook group? Are you going to give that up? Like how does this even map out?
Right. So the way I did it in a really practical sense was I asked myself, what's the maximum amount of time I can continue doing publicity for without wanting to tear my hair out? And the figure that I got, the timeline that I got, was 6 months. And so it was March when I had the breakthrough. I took it through to September. So it was 6 months. And I thought, okay, so if I'm phasing out in September, how do I work back from that? So, okay, if I stop intaking clients at this point, and if I close down this program at this point, and I sort of did a work back plan, which funnily enough, I learned in corporate PR for events. I know you're from a marketing background, so I'm sure you've done similar things. And so I basically mapped it out of what are the timelines, just in really broad kind of terms. And then when I looked at each thing, I thought, well, what needs to happen around that? And as I'm phasing out publicity, how am I going to phase in Twin Flames, and how am I going to announce this? And I announced it in a video. And once I had a very loose plan, I explained what the plan was to people. We'll be ramping up Twin Flame content. We'll be ramping down publicity. Obviously, at this point, if you do feel like my new content's not resonating with you, then you're very welcome to, kind of drop off, as it were. I forget what my wording was. But I announced it to people, and it was so interesting. I thought people would be absolutely aghast and so dramatic about it, and no one was really that stunned, because it had been there for so long under the surface. I'd mentioned it before, and it was so clear that it was so aligned. And then I just really got cracking with the doing of the tasks, of the tearing down the old programs and starting the new ones.
So first, what you did was you created a timeline for yourself.
Yeah.
And one that would really work for you. And I love how you positioned it. Like, how long am I willing to do PR?
Yeah.
So for our listeners, like, how long are you willing to do what it is that you're currently doing?
Right.
And then after that, you created a little game plan for yourself and then announced that to your following. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. And I love that you brought your following into it. I think a lot of people would be scared to do that because of the fear of, like, what are they going to think? Am I going to lose people? This feels too complicated to explain. Are people even going to understand? And so a lot of people would just avoid that completely and just do, what I call like a night and day shift, where overnight everything just changes, and they've been planning it for months and months and months, but haven't explained it to anyone yet. And that can be a real shock to your following. So I love that you brought them into the process that way.
Thank you. Yeah, it felt essential, really. And the way I did the video, it was like a 20-minute video. It was fairly unscripted, but I had some key points I wanted to hit of, this is what you can expect if you want to work with me on publicity. Here's your options until this point. Here's what's phasing out and when. And on the Twin Flame side, like, if you're interested, here's what you can expect. And I started to then explain, well, what is a Twin Flame? Because people were thinking, well, what is it that you're actually doing? I don't understand what it is you're doing. And so I explained what that was. So really in my head, I was thinking, okay, well, let's just sit in the seat of the critic for a second, or the doubter, or the non-believer who's like, what are you actually doing? And let's think about the questions they might ask or be thinking, and let's address that. So what are you doing? What even is a Twin Flame? How did this come about? And so I created some talking points around each common question, or each question I thought that could be brought up. And really just got straight with it and said, you might be thinking, what on earth is she doing? This is so different. But actually, it's something that's been bubbling up for a while, and here's why, and here's what it is, and covered all the, the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, how, why, all of that. And tackling it that way, it was very much a PR exercise, quite ironically, but it made everyone aware of what was happening. And if people had questions, I could then direct them to the video, rather than having to have conversations one-on-one with people. And of course, I had the conversations one-on-one with my existing PR clients, so they were informed before anything went public, and that was really, really important to me. And from there, I just went public with the video.
And it's great that you have something to reference people to, because I'm sure that you got a lot of DMs and messages from people saying, hey, wait, what?
It was funny. I did get a lot of DMs and messages, but it wasn't really the people who didn't understand. It was, oh my God, I think I'm a Twin Flame. And that's continued every day of my life since then. So yeah, people started like instantly tagging friends and asking questions about twins. And that's when I knew that I'd kind of struck a nerve and struck that kind of volcano, if you will, knowing that people were absolutely, running in to have me talk about this. And that was a reminder that it was very much aligned with my soul's work, because I've never had a response like that to any work that I've done in publicity and various business pivots that I've had through publicity and entrepreneurship. And I've never had anything happen this quickly. It's only been, 6 months since ASL, and I cannot believe I am in currently the September issue of Soul and Spirit magazine in the UK, which is the largest spiritual magazine in the UK, and I'm the cover story. That's insane.
It's fucking amazing. And
yeah,
FYI, like this is the type of shit that happens
Right.
when you're in alignment, when you're doing what it is that you're meant to do. And I think the thing that I really want to point out is that the publicity, your career in publicity, whether you're at the PR firm in corporate or your own entrepreneurial endeavors, like at that time when you were in it, that was what you were meant to do.
Yes.
And I think this is what people misunderstand is when they reach pivots like this or transitions, they think, oh, I've been wasting my time. And it's like, no, you haven't. It's just as you continue to evolve, your purpose, your mission, your vision, like what it is that you're here to do is going to continue to evolve. And like you've weaved in quite beautifully, Cheryl, so much of your past career has helped you build this new twin flame business. Like so much of it has helped you build that. And, I'm the same way. Like I'm a former makeup artist, former marketing director, former promotions manager, like former so many different things. And all of those things have come into play in this career that I lead right now. So when it comes to evolution, I mean, even now, how you explain the whole shift, quite frankly, it sounds a little too easy. You're just like, oh yeah, create a timeline for yourself, create a plan, and then tell your audience, and poof, you'll be in this new, like, heartfelt, purpose-driven, aligned as fuck mission. And that's not really how it works. Right. Like, there was a lot of shit mindfuckery, aka mindfuckery, that was probably going on behind the scenes. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. But particularly because I'm teaching on twin flames and I have a twin flame. And so in the twin flame process, there's lots of healing and triggers that come up. So here I am teaching on it. And I'm at the time I was getting triggered and still healing. And I'm like, that head fuckery of who am I to teach on this? Because I'm currently going through it. Well, that's why you're meant to teach on it. So it was like, it was a whole thing. It certainly wasn't easy. But what I will say is it is the easiest thing I've done in business in that. Yes, there was a lot of action and it was massive action. It was very much aligned, like with the magazine thing, but it didn't feel like I had to get like a huge like battering ram and batter down doors. It felt like I would push on doors and they would open for me. Like it felt more at ease, but not easy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Like ease filled,
ease filled.
Versus like just this is easy. And when you were in PR, I mean, you had built in your entrepreneurial business. Let's talk about that. You had built a reputation for yourself. People knew you for that. You had clients. It's not that your business was sinking. It's not that your business was a failure. It's just that you had personally reached a point in your personal evolution where you were like, this is no longer aligned. Or in other words, like, this is no longer exciting me. This is no longer something I'm passionate about. It's still something that you're really fucking good at. Like you could probably do that shit with your eyes closed now still.
I actually can. It's so easy for me. It's ridiculous. It's so funny. I have like PR people that post client successes and I'm like, I'm getting better client media results myself promoting my own shit because I'm that good at PR. But it comes to the point, and maybe this is the thing I shouldn't say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I got really tired of other people being in the spotlight. Like I just did. And I don't mean to say that from an ego point. I'm just like, this is bullshit. Like the reason I'm helping light workers step into the spotlight is because I believe so fully in, this kind of new earth we're creating, if that's what we want to call it, this new shift that's happening in the world right now. So why is it I'm sitting behind my computer and not, doing things like this, doing interviews and doing speeches and whatnot? Why is it I'm helping other people to do that? It was a way of hiding, actually, is what it was. So I got really tired of being the one pushing other people in front of the camera when I knew actually it was a way of me hiding and playing small.
Okay. Yeah, and I can see that. And I think that there's a lot of people that probably fall into that as well. But again, like at the beginning, like that was what your purpose was for that moment in time, right?
And I'm so glad you said that before, Ruby, about like when people think, oh, I've been wasting my time. It's not that they weren't aligned then. It's that there was something they needed to learn there. And perhaps that piece of the puzzle is going to become clear later as to what you learn. For me, it's very obvious. It helps me to promote my twin flame work. It's quite clear that I'm going to take that into winning book deals and more media and all the rest of it. But it might not be so obvious for maybe people listening who are thinking, well, I don't know how working in an accountancy firm is really going to help me in business. Well, there's probably a skill there that's going to help you in business. It all transfers, right? So yeah, I never want people to think they're wasting their time. The amount of times in my business I've said, oh, I shouldn't have done this, it was a waste of time, and it's become a cog in the machine. And I understand that if I hadn't done that, there would be no way of it being the way it is now. It was essential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything that we do, I feel, contributes to our next step.
It does.
Everything. And so I want to go back to your 3-step like transition where you talked about the timeline, the plan, and then speaking to your audience.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the plan, because even when I think about all the things that I would need to change if I wanted to do another pivot, it's really fucking overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't pivot. It's not the fear of what their audience will think. It's the overwhelm of everything that they would have to do. I mean, maybe people have a website that they've taken like a couple of years to perfectly craft and get the copyright, and maybe they've just finally landed on like how to write amazing social media copy for this niche that they're in right now. Maybe they have a business that is working. For me, in 2017, I had a business that was working and I was overbooked as a coach. And when I chose to pivot, the type of clients I work with, that was really fucking scary. And I know that there was so much behind the scenes that people didn't see that I had to change and orchestrate those changes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I think that that's the part that some of our listeners might be feeling stuck in. Like, they want to change. They know they have a different calling now, or that their calling has evolved and they want to step into that. But like, where the fuck do they start when it comes to the planning that happens behind the scenes?
Yeah. Where do I even start with that? So not knowing even how to answer the question, I think summarizes really well how difficult it is. How did I even do this? Fuck. It was really compartmentalizing it into, I guess, promotion and platform, programs, and I think those two pieces mainly, they were the main, and I didn't consciously do this. It was sort of intuitive for me because I've done a number of shifts, and I used to do this with clients in publicity anyway, like segmenting stuff. So segmenting the platform and the promotion and then the programs, and tearing one down while introducing another. And it felt like tectonic plates moving underneath me. It was that kind of feeling of like constantly moving and nothing really being secure or safe, and thinking it could erupt at any moment. It was sort of like, I really shouldn't say this, you're in California. Stay calm, Mother Earth. But it was that feeling of shifting underneath me, like I didn't really have a solid ground. And I think I've reached a point now, 6 months in, where it does feel quite solid, and now I have a foundation, I can build upon it, and I've been doing that. But yeah, it's really hard to give like a perfect kind of process of how it was. It was segmenting it into those two buckets and then tearing down a piece and building a piece. And it was messy. It wasn't perfect. It was getting things on the website before I had photography. And I'm very much like a get it done girl. And if it's not perfect, like, it's still going to go up there and it's going to work. I used my old photography. I still haven't had a proper reshoot actually, which I'm looking at doing now. But it was, let's use what I have now and use that. And we hear that all the time, don't we? Start with what you have and do what you can and all that shit. But it's true. Like, I needed to just use what I have and just get a little bit scrappy with it. And in fact, it was you, Ruby, who said to me, and again, you don't know I'm going to say this, but it was you that said to me, you need to have a bit of a year one mentality. Like, yes, you've been in business 4 years, but you need to have that hungry mentality, not this year 4 mentality of, oh, I've been in the game a long time, things should just come to me. It was, and once you said that, things really shifted, because I realized that I was being a bit like, oh, well, I've been doing this a while, but I had to take on that perspective of building something from scratch again. And yeah, it didn't look perfect from the outside, and it certainly wasn't perfect behind the scenes. I did things really quickly and I didn't hesitate. So for example, in May, I had the idea to get more content out into the world. And that was when my following really shot up, and when I started getting all the Twin Flame clients in was when I started to do I was doing a weekly video anyway called Twin Flame Weekly on Mondays, and I had the downloads to do that on YouTube too, and that brought in more people, more clients. I also do a meditation on Wednesdays and a blog on Fridays, and I'm looking at this thinking, can I produce 2 videos a week and a blog on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week? Can I consistently commit to this? And I'm on the 20th episode of Twin Flame Weekly and the 12th meditation and the 12th blog. So I've been doing it, consistently since then. So it was really implementing that and knowing that I could commit to it, and trusting myself is really what it was. But then also trying it and saying, if it doesn't work, I can try something else, but let's just try this. And if it works, which it did, we'll keep it. And if it doesn't, we'll toss it out. But what was really interesting is, even though I was in that year one mentality, I had enough experience behind me to know how not to fuck it up, if that makes sense. So I took all that experience with me, which really collapsed my timelines to the point that by June, I made another announcement, plot twist everyone, I made another announcement and said, I'm closing down my PR practice at the end of the month. So I actually closed it down in June, not September.
So you closed it down earlier, which is amazing.
3 months. I'm like, I cannot continue doing this PR stuff, because at that point I'd started ramping up Twin Flame content, and I realized how much better it felt. And I had maybe 1 or 2 clients at that point. Like, it wasn't very stable, but I just realized I have to go all in at this point. So I guess that the message for people there is, do the transition, but there is a point where you have to drop the other thing. And it's probably going to be before you're ready.
Yeah. And I think that that's super crucial to mention, and how you mentioned the tectonic plates too. And I think a lot of people think that you have to drop everything that you're doing in order to pick up the new thing. And no, don't do that. Do not do that. Do not completely quit everything that you're doing to build that up, unless you have the funding behind you, unless you have the cushion to lean on, because you never know what that process is going to be like when you start up the new venture, the new business, the new model, the new product, the new programs. And so I love that you were saying, you let go of one thing, you create another thing. So it's like you're constantly moving, you're constantly creating and letting go.
Yeah.
And then eventually, it's like a seesaw, eventually it tips, and you're all of a sudden now 100% in this new venture, in your new pivot, in the new transition. So for our listeners, if you're looking to make this transition, understand that it is not an overnight process, and that it is as much of a letting go process as it is a creation process. And you're doing both simultaneously. That is super important to mention. I remember, and I'm pretty sure, Cheryl, I shared this with you, but in 2014, when I did Gabby Bernstein's very first Spirit Junkie Masterclass live, she was on stage with Chris Carr. And at that point in time, I was running my social media marketing boutique agency. And I knew I wanted to get into coaching. And I put my hand up and I said, I have a question. I really want to go into this next thing. I know it's my calling. I know it's what I want to do. And they asked me well, how's your business doing? I said, it's really successful, actually. I've never paid a dime for marketing. Clients keep coming to me, but I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do this other thing. And they just said to me, treat your current career as your investor, and funnel that money into the new venture, the new business that you're building, and build as you let go. And so I love that you mentioned that that's what you did too, because that created so much more ease than had I just quit my marketing company and burned it down, and then had to create from a place of scarcity because there's no money coming in. Right. So you did it in a way that really models trust in yourself and trust in what it is that you're creating. And I'm curious to know more about that, because you mentioned self-trust, but what does that actually look like in action?
Oh, that's a really juicy question. It has ironically been part of the twin flame healing process for me is trusting myself, like healing things like codependency. And a part of codependency is not trusting yourself to make decisions. And after healing as a twin flame, that really served me in then teaching about twin flames and having a business around that. And I think it did help, having been in this business for 4 years, having been in corporate, all of that really helped. But it was how do I describe this? It was deeper than like a mental trust in myself. It was like a soul deep trust. It was an inner knowing. And I know that's very kind of loosey goosey and woo woo and not very solid, but it was a feeling like this is what I'm meant to do. And I really believe in combining the spiritual with the traditional, not just in the way that I coach clients, twin flame clients, but also in the way that I do life. To be honest, I like the balance of both. I think we both do. And so I've worked with astrologers, and it's really interesting that in my birth chart is relationships and writing and sexuality and teaching, leading and entrepreneurship. And I found that out last summer, 2017, almost 9 months before I had the breakthrough. So you can imagine I'm working in publicity and I hear you're going to be teaching on relationships. I thought, this is like crazy talk, like this is just not right.
Yeah.
But so then linking back to the self-trust piece, like it was all these pieces that I'd heard along the way, suddenly it sort of clicked into place. And I saw all these different jigsaw pieces and they all came in. I went, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing now. That's not to say it won't shift and evolve as I shift and evolve. Of course it will. I don't think I'll always teach on twin flames. I'm sure it will become wider and it'll be the divine feminine. And I'm called to work with men as well. I do already work with men, actually. So the self-trust piece was easier, knowing that all these different fragments had aligned and it felt amazing. It was almost like I didn't even need to address self-trust because it was so obvious that this is what I was meant to be doing. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's certainly how it felt.
Yeah, that the way in which you just answered it brought something up for me, actually. It's like whenever I land on something that is like an inner knowing, like we all have those moments where we have an idea, maybe it's an idea for a blog or an article or a video, or maybe it's like a whole complete career shift, whatever it is. When we have an idea and it's like a soul resounding yes, it's like, you're meant to do this, or you're meant to write this, or you're meant to film this in this moment. Like, it's just that inner knowing.
Yeah.
When we tap into that inner knowing, it becomes so much easier to trust ourselves. Like you said, it's a non-issue because you're actually listening to your intuition, to your soul, like you're tapping in, versus listening to everything that is happening outside of yourself, listening to your fears, listening to the beliefs, listening to all the reasons why you shouldn't be doing what you really want to do. That shit is tougher to trust because that's not real. So right. I love that you shared that. And I love that I had that epiphany from your share because I think, all of our listeners, even if you're not going through a career shift or a transition, like I know you can all relate to some moment in time when you've had that soul resounding knowing, like knowing that you need to be doing this one thing or make this one decision. And it's so much easier to trust when you're in that moment.
And to be honest, I think it also helps having a connection to a higher power, whether it's, you call it God or the divine or spirit or whatever. But certainly when I could see how the pieces fit together, I felt my higher powers collectively going, thank God, she's finally got the messages we've been sending her for the past, 6, 9 months, 12 months. And it felt as if this is woo to the woo, but it felt as if, I mean, it is, but it felt as if a force greater than me was pushing this information through me like I've never experienced before. I got a book proposal done before I made the transition. In fact, my book proposal was in about a week after I came back from ASL, and I hadn't even transitioned yet. So I wrote this whole book proposal, which I still have. And it felt like something was barreling through me, and it felt like the powers that be, if you like, were really helping me out, because the things that happened so quickly, everything had this ease to it. Like I said, I didn't have to knock down the doors with a battering ram like I would have done in PR, and I would have got it done anyway. It was as if I just pushed gently on this door and it opened for me, and I said, of course, this is my door. That's right. How it felt.
Mm-hmm. I love that visual.
Thank you.
It's when the door just swings open for you. You're like, yep, this is my door. This is what I'm meant to be doing.
Oh, it's like those doors in like, Asda over here or Walmart in the States. Like they just open for you. They're automatic.
Right.
I didn't even have to open the door. It opened itself.
Right. And that's how it is when you land on what it is that you're meant to be doing. And again, just to reiterate and emphasize that this is all going to change. Like as you evolve, your purpose evolves, your vision evolves, the way in which you carry out your purpose and your mission, that's going to evolve. All of it is meant to evolve as you evolve. What's important is that you listen to that evolution and take action on it. Otherwise, what happens is we start resenting what we're doing. We start losing our fire. We start, eventually even like hating what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it becomes that, what was the point of building this beautiful business for yourself to achieve, the life that you dream of, and yet you're resenting what you're doing. We don't want to end up in that pit. And so it's really important that to our listeners, like listen to your evolution and follow it wherever it is taking you, and have the courage, like Cheryl, to take action on it when you feel that call, when it's erupting from within you. Cheryl, do you have any last pointers that you would love to offer our audience? Like say there's someone listening right now and they're like, I know what my calling is in this moment, and I know I need to change. I'm just not sure if I can do this. Where do I start?
Yeah, so I think because we've done such a great job of covering the practical, what I would say on a bit of a higher level is one, well, overall, don't engage in magical thinking. And what I mean by that is one, there is no perfect time to start. It's always going to feel inconvenient, uncomfortable, all of it, right? All those things. And two, the other side of magical thinking is thinking that as soon as you do pivot, everything's going to be magical and perfect. Like, yes, the doors do open, but you will be, absolutely shitting it at various points. You will wonder, what am I doing? Even though it feels great, you'll still have the, as you say, the mindfuck moments, the mindfuckery. So yeah, don't think that you've got to wait for the perfect time to start. And then when you do start, keep in mind there may be obstacles along the way, and that doesn't mean it's not aligned.
That's so important for everyone to hear. The obstacles don't go away just because you're aligned as fuck.
No, and I think people think, these obstacles are coming in, so it's not the thing I meant to do. Not necessarily. Like, you don't know, that obstacle could be so many different things, and let's not even get into like what it could be. But just because an obstacle is there, it doesn't mean you go, oh well, I guess I'll just give up. It's like when you're in a workout and you're sweating and you're in the middle of it. I know, because I'm back on the Jillian Michaels regime. Like, it's intense. And you get to the middle of the workout and you're thinking, why am I doing this? This is really tough. And you get to the end and you remember your why, you remember why you're doing it. It's like that when we pivot, we do get to points that are really tough. Like when I'm thinking this week, I'm like, I'm moving from one side of the country to the other this week. So it's kind of intense, but I'm thinking I've got to film my content this week. How am I going to do that? And like, I'll be really frank with everyone, this week, I'm not feeling super motivated to do that because my mind's on moving house. Right. So there are going to be those moments, then you have to remember why you're doing it and then get back on track. So just because you get a little bit of resistance or a few obstacles along the way, don't take that as a sign that it's bad. It's just, it doesn't mean everything is going to be easy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. We are at the end of our episode, and this is where I turn the tables on you, Cheryl. What is your love punch to sum up our conversation today?
My love punch is, transitions will always feel uncomfortable in the moment, but they are essential for our soul's evolution.
I feel that so hard. As you know, I'm always evolving.
I know.
It's uncomfortable as fuck, but man, does it yield amazing results when we listen to our evolution.
Yeah, it really does. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Cheryl. I always appreciate having your British accent on this podcast.
Anytime. I'll come back anytime.
Why don't you tell our listeners how they can stalk you online?
Sure, you can stalk me on the various places on the interwebs, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube. And you can either put my name into YouTube or look for my handles at Cheryl J. Muir. And the details of how to work with me are cherylmuir.com.
Awesome. I will have all of that in our show notes. Thank you again, Cheryl. And to our listeners, I just want to say thanks for joining us on another episode of Love Punch, where I'm challenging thought leaders, influencers, and entrepreneurs like you to make a lasting impact. If you loved this episode with me and Cheryl, please share it with a friend. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Hit us both up on the interwebs if you want to connect. And if you're feeling a little extra love, drop a review on iTunes. I will see you all back here next week with a brand new episode of Love Punch.